Let me move the conversation to our next guest, who is the Member of Parliament for the Tharaka constituency, the Honourable George Murugara. Good morning.
Good morning, Latif. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you again in the Situation Room. Always a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. It's been a while, but we've been out there doing stuff.
Doing things.
Absolutely trying to make things work.
We will talk about them. But before we do that, City has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from Chad.
Yes, they're from the country of Chad. Arrogance burnt the chief's compound.
Arrogance burnt the chief's compound.
5 words.
That's it.
That's it.
Mheshimiwa, what do you make of this proverb? What's your interpretation?
I think what that means is pride comes before a fall. That's really the other translation of that one. That here was a chief who was extremely arrogant, possibly proud. He was not listening to his subjects, as a result of which he suffered the consequences, which possibly they just raided his kraal and set it ablaze because they would see no value in this particular chief. So something similar to that, that sincerely you have to humble yourself, not just before God, but also before man.
For young people.
That you are able to serve people with humility.
Very well said. You are co-chair of the Bipartisan Dialogue Committee. And the last time you were here, we were talking about the Bipartisan Dialogue Committee and the work ahead. Yesterday, you held a meeting with your side of the coalition, the Kenya Kwanza coalition, came out and made a plea and a call to the other side, the Azimio coalition, to rejoin the talks.
Yeah.
And then you put in a condition. And you told them, if you don't come in within 7 days, the IEBC selection panel then should begin its work.
Yeah.
Make that clear. What exactly were you saying?
We were being honest. We were being extremely honest. We were being candid because, remember, the talks have not broken down. They were just suspended. We have not yet exited properly under our framework agreement. So what we did was, first after the suspension, we went into budget making process and the finance bill and the finance laws. So that took a bit of time, and we had to dedicate our time and the space towards that. Now that that is behind us, we thought it is the appropriate time to go back and discuss one major issue. And I must confess to you that even when I was here last time, I told you one common issue we have between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza is on IEBC. We need to listen to them to hear exactly what problems they have with the selection panel, because there are no commissioners already selected. So the only problem they would have is with the selection panel. So we know for sure that we have held this for 1 month. And we had told them that we would informally request a selection panel to hold it for about a month. That has happened. Eventually, we have not made any progress, and we thought it's a high time we went back to the talking table. This is why we invited them for a meeting on Tuesday, so that we can do the first issue, which is IBC, and if there are any other issues that are lined up in order of urgency, we would consider them when we go back to the negotiating table. Now, what is the effect of the default? Because they may tell us, sorry, we will not come. We don't like what you have done. We don't like you people. We won't come. The effect is what we've always told them, that we have a law in place. Unless Parliament amends that law is going to kick in and it will have to be carried through. So the selection panel is going to be under the relevant section of the IEBC Act to carry out the nominations, which then will be forwarded to the president, and the president will appoint commissioners to IEBC. We've said we cannot hold this anymore because 1 or 2 constituencies, I know of one, maybe there's another one, have no MPs, simply because the MP died and he's not been replaced. We have several wards, about 5 of them, which require replacement of MCS. The only person who can do this is IEBC. And therefore, we require IEBC constituted as at yesterday, not even today. Yes.
Okay. So I can hear you on some things that can actually move without too much, one would say, animosity. Then all seem to be at a halt right now.
Yeah.
From what we've seen yesterday, from calls from Azimio for hoping to get notice, really, from government on certain things, especially with the passage of the finance bill and the repealing of that is what is being sought after. Now, this bipartisan talks also comes into play because one of the key action plans that they have, which they're saying is that they've withdrawn the Azimio La Umoja team from the bipartisan talks. So what does this portend for this process?
That was said in a public rally.
Right.
We will only believe that they've withdrawn if we go back to the framework agreement. The relevant notices are given under that agreement, and eventually there is exiting, as also provided in the agreement. Pronouncements in a political rally may actually be what they have in mind, but it has to be actualized.
Okay.
So we are waiting for them to actualize this. In the meantime, there may also be a change of mind, because this is for the good of the country.
Is that what is hoped for? A change of mind to say, come back to the table and let's talk about
that is what we hope for. Otherwise, then what was their problem with the IEBC? The rest of the issues they are raising, including the finance bill, was not part of our talks. It was introduced the last minute. That part of our talks now in some parliamentary group meeting that was attended towards when they suspended, it's when the finance bill came in. And we told them, sorry, we cannot have new things coming up day and night because this is going to hinder our progress. So we said, no, it's going to be part of it. And we said, fine, if it's part of it, it's part of it. But as far as we are concerned as Kenya Kwanza, the common issue we had was IEBC. And we are prepared to sit down, negotiate on the issues surrounding the selection panel. But if they don't come back, so be it. Let's go to the law. Let's have a selection panel in place. Let's constitute IEBC. The rest of the issues, we shall deal with them. I heard them saying lawyers will meet lawyers, whether in court or elsewhere. We have no problem with that. We have enough lawyers, just as they also have enough lawyers.
You know, whenever we have these discussions around the bipartisan processes that we're supposed to follow, three questions come to mind. One, was there ever goodwill from both sides when this process was begun? That's question number one. Question number two, following up on the goodwill, is there any hope that these discussions, when concluded, can actually see the actualization of what is agreed upon? Lastly, is this particular forum something that can be instituted so that it becomes a permanent commission? So that, because the problems we have in this country, it's not as though these are just part of the problem. Something else will come up. And sometimes it appears that going to either the National Assembly or the Senate to discuss these things may not necessarily give us the results that we want. So those are my three questions.
Thank you very much. The first one is goodwill. I confirm on behalf of Kenya Kwanza, we actually had goodwill. And I kept on repeating that we were mandated to act within the law. And that's why they were saying, sorry, you're becoming a hardliner because you're insisting on the law being followed. And I was constantly telling them, sorry, you cannot do this because if you try to suspend the law at any one moment, that is called a coup. You are executing a coup against some legally elected government or instituted government or whatever it is. So we had goodwill. And this is why, in our view, the most urgent issue that had to be dealt with was IEBC. The other issues were also pertinent. Reduction on cost of living, but we kept on asking, how is this to be done? The processes have to be administrative. They are not legal. And therefore, while we appreciate what you're saying, we have to be told how quickly it can be done, knowing for sure that as a government policy, we are moving away from subsidies. So that was on the table. As regards would the policies have been implemented, I confirm yes. Whatever we agree on in IEBC, I confirm Kenya Kwanza was prepared to actually implement so that we get IBC in place as quickly as we can. The selection panel may not have been a hinder, whichever way, but the real issue is constitution of the commissioners themselves so that IBC can carry on with its work. The rest of the matters would have possibly gradually been implemented as we are doing on cost of living. We still have tax duty-free sugar coming in. We have duty-free maize coming in. And we got many other measures that are being to try and bring down the cost of food.
Yeah.
As regards whether we should have this as a permanent institution, a permanent committee or commission, that we have to fall back to the law.
Okay.
What does the law say? And is there a provision for such a committee to be in place within our legal framework? Now, as regards what we have today, we were saying it has to be parliamentary, a parliamentary committee, because that's the only way to can have legal impetus. And we believe we were towards that with recognition by Parliament and everything else, and we were progressing well. But let that be as it is now. Let's wait and see what happens next.
Mheshimiwa, with this political situation as it is right now, are you genuinely prepared to take the risk and constitute a selection panel and let that selection panel then go ahead to recruit IEBC commissioners, knowing full well the political backlash of it in terms of politically campaigning against the legitimacy of the IEBC commissioners in office, and then thrusting the issue of mistrust of a crucial commission that is conducting elections?
And unfortunately, we have the law. We must follow the law to the letter. We have invited them to come, and we have a sitting and a discussion. We've even offered on the table, if there is need to change the law, we will do it to accommodate them. They are now saying, we will not come to you. If they do not come to us, then the next option they have, and they know of it, and it's available to them, is go to Parliament and agitate your issues there. Amend whatever law you want to amend, do it whichever you want to do it. The correct position is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with the selection panel that is already constituted. But we need to be told. I say so because as far as I'm concerned, the law was followed to the letter. And it was their law. This is the law that we passed in the last Parliament. That is number one. Number two is they have to participate in the process. So if these commissioners are not acceptable to them, they again have to come to Parliament and make sure that these are rejected. That is the only other way we can do it. I do not think we can have any extra legal way of doing it. It has to be the legal way. And believe you me, it's going to be done, and IBC is going to be in place.
But Mheshimiwa, it's politics. Beyond the political grandstanding that both of you sides are having, you people talk to one another. You're friends with your colleagues from the other side. You know what their proposal was going to be. You have already had these informal conversations and discussions. You know what their proposal was going to be with regard to the law and the composition of the selection panel. You know that.
Well,
why don't you maybe, just as a show of goodwill, extension of the goodwill that you claim to have in abundance, just bring an amendment bill, because this was likely going to be the result of the talk. Bring an amendment bill of the IEBC Act, changing the composition of the selection panel, just the same way, this was what they were going to propose. Bring it to the floor of the House and let them vote yes or no on it.
So
that way, you can even come out politically and say,
I hold a brief for them, such that now instead of them proposing what they want, it is me, out of informal conversations, who is bringing the proposals.
Yes.
I don't think that would be in good faith. I don't think that is the way things are supposed to be done.
Do you think
the truth is away from the talks? What I had out there is that they were proposing that the four commissioners be appointed, Kenya Kwanza 2, selection panel, not commissioners.
Selection
Kenya
panel.
Kwanza 2 and Azimio 2. The rest 3 are distributed to the others. Okay. There was a problem with that. Remember, the reason why that particular section was changed is because the court annulled it. Said there is a problem with the Parliamentary Service Commission getting 4 slots. And when it got 4 slots, 2 were for Azimio, 2 were for Kenya Kwanza. The court annulled that. What did we go to? We were told Parliamentary Service Commission must have 2 representatives. Only 2.
Yes.
One went to Azimio, one went to Kenya Kwanza. They refused to nominate theirs. We had to advertise their position, and eventually some interview was done, and a person was picked because they had refused to pick their own. Now, though that's what I know off the record. Yeah. How do I bring it to the record? I can't, because it is off the record. It is for them to bring it on record. It is for them to come back to the table. And they say, now, we have all these issues, including the Finance Bill and what have you, the Finance Act and what have you and what have you. But let's solve the IEBC equation first. So we go there and discuss. It is them to move. I cannot move myself. Sure. I cannot be moved by what I hear from the streets.
No,
somebody has to move
it. It is not from what you hear from the streets, Mheshimiwa. You can even conduct an ad hoc public participation. Right?
For them?
The leadership of Azimio may not come, but maybe members of Azimio may come, and they'll tell you exactly the same thing. If the issue, and let's assume that this issue that they are advocating is actually popular, then if it's popular with the people will come and tell you, we have a problem with the selection panel as proposed in the current law. If we have a problem with, for example, the Public Service Commission, Parliamentary Service Commission, political parties liaison, and the others contributing, and we can see that these are likely going to be influenced by Kenya Kwanza, they'll come and tell you in public participation.
Yeah, that's good enough, but why are we doing it?
And that's what you've asked. I think the second time you've asked the question, and then why are you doing this? Is all of this precipitated on the demand for Azimio, for example, to be part of that selection committee, or are we looking at the greater picture of electoral reforms in Kenya, which many people have been clamoring for the longest time? So, if you say why are we doing it, can it not be that it is because the sought after electoral reforms that have not happened in this country then perhaps will take center stage? Not doing it for Azimio, but doing it for the country.
But sincerely, who is supposed to be the driver of electoral reforms in the country? Is it Parliament? And if it is Parliament, the question is how? Or is it the IEBC that is supposed to be the driver of electoral reforms in the country? To me, it is not Parliament. To me, it is IEBC. IEBC is an independent commission. It takes directions from no one. And that is why we are saying the law should be followed. They are constituted, and any of Kenyans, parties, whoever, have proposals to make on electoral reforms, those should go to IEBC. IEBC is going to sieve them, and if there is any law to be made, that's when they come to Parliament. But if Parliament abrogates onto itself the process of conducting electoral reforms, it's based on what law?
If indeed, as you say, Mheshimiwa, the IEBC were independent, why is it that we always have this hoo-ha when it comes to selecting people who will be part of that commission? This party formation wants this person wants this person. Are we then implying that we assume that the people they appoint or the people they select to represent their party will not be independent? Or is it that we know for a fact that they want people who will carry out the dictates and the wishes of their party and their people?
That possibly is it.
So then how independent then
grappling,
can... Yes.
Grappling is part and parcel of mankind, our way of doing things. When we appoint a Chief Justice, there is one side that is going to grapple. Say, sorry, your choice is not our choice. It's common. And judiciary is independent. When we elect the Speaker of the National Assembly, there is a side that will say, sorry, we don't recognize that Speaker. Even the executive, when we elect the Chief Executive of the country, the President, a side will say, we don't agree. So, whatever we try to do, sir, we will always be faced with the grappling that these people you've nominated, these people you've selected may not be what we want, but we have to move on.
I am in agreement with you about moving on. what I'm raising is this never-ending debate about the IEBC. Okay? The moment political parties decided to have their say as to who is there and who does what, you have a selection. People choose, beginning with the commission led by Hassan, sorry. Something doesn't go the way one party. Suddenly, these commissioners and the political party who didn't win that election were part and parcel of appointing the people who were in that commission. Suddenly, there's something wrong with this commission. So, I am of the view that it has nothing to do with the commission. Because even if God Almighty brought the commission and chose the members himself and said, I, the Almighty God, have chosen these people as commissioners, there would be an issue. So why don't we deal with that issue? Because what you've intimated at is, even with this bipartisan forum that you are co-chair of, okay? You say you people came in good faith. By implication then, the Azimio side did not have good faith. They just came. Because everything that is discussed, it looks like there has to be a bulwark somewhere. There has to be something that derails it somewhere. So it's never moving forward. And the understanding of us lay people is that they are not in agreement. So you have to ask a question, okay, so what are they in agreement with?
We don't think they're going to agree to anything. That's our view. I am sorry. And possibly because they are the opposition. The opposition should not agree with the government.
Is that really the role of the opposition, to disagree with the government?
It is not supposed to be. It's supposed to be what is called a responsible opposition, that you do not reject everything. It was surprising to hear that we were being told to withdraw the finance bill. The finance bill is the law that anchors the budget of the country for a whole financial year. So you're being told to withdraw it and replace it with what? Replace it with submitting somewhere of every Kenyan so that we can agree.
Was there a suggestion as to what should replace it?
There was no suggestion whatsoever. It was brought to the table. We don't like this one. It has taxes. It has everything.
Okay, so there was an alternative offered?
There was no alternative offered whatsoever. It is purely just withdraw it. We go and discuss what is supposed to be in there, and then we come up with a new one. I have never seen any government, I have not heard of any government that would accede to that. What you do with the finance bill is, it's an executive bill. It comes to Parliament. Our work is to amend that particular bill. This is what we were telling them. We are not going to withdraw. Come to the House. Come up with your proposals. We will consider them. If they sail through, you're fine. If you lose, you have to agree you've lost. So, surely, that's a problem we had with the demands that were placed to us. That's why we are saying, possibly they will not agree to anything, but the country must move.
But consider anything that goes to Parliament, they were going to lose anyway.
Well, sorry about that, because it's part of the process. It's part of the democracy in the country.
So the matter going to Parliament was a no-brainer. I mean,
so surely, what do you do in the circumstances? You have to accept you've lost.
That's why the process that you are co-chair of was created, to try and find a middle ground between what was a definitive moment. It goes to Parliament. Kenya Kwanza has a majority.
Thank you.
Okay? So, this was supposed to bridge. My understanding.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you're right. You're right. That is what we were supposed to do. But unfortunately, when we went to this table, we were met with the demand upon demand, and much of it was blackmail. It's either you do this or we pull
walk out.
Do this or we walk out. There comes a time you say, I have bent so far that I can't bend anymore, which is what we were telling them.
Okay, how had you bent? This one we have to ask.
Let's start with
what did you concede to?
What was the first demand? Remove Kaidan. There was absolutely nothing wrong with Honorable Kaidan. It's purely because, as a person, as a member of Parliament representing Elders, nothing wrong. But purely because we don't like Kaidan. We don't like him who he associates with. We don't like the way he has come in. Who are you to bring him here? Remove him. All right? We had issues with Kosing. We said, fine. Maybe
because of who he represents or who he associates with.
Even him, regarding his party.
Okay.
We're still not satisfied. But he said no.
So you are draw there.
Yeah, we had a draw there.
Everybody had issues.
One person had to give in. Who gave in? Kenya Kwanza gave in.
So Kosing remained.
So Kosing remained, and we had to bring in somebody else. All right? We bent. The second demand that came in was we were not going to be parliamentary at all. We said, sorry, we will lack impetus in law. We will lack anchoring in law. We must actually have some law backing us so that when the time comes, we have somewhere to take the even if the principals refuse the documents, we have parliament to table that document too. We haggled over it and we had to go 50-50, meet in the middle. We say, fine, we will have an element of extra parliamentary and parliamentary.
Okay.
So again, here we've bent to agree to it because when this was being set up, the communique that we got was it has to be within the parameters of the law.
Yeah.
Anything extra parliamentary was not within the law. So we bent here. We moved on. And you can see it is handle after handle. Now, we got to discuss the issues of IEBC. Listen to what we're being told. You have to agree that the selection panel suspends its work. We said, under what law can we agree to this? No. We are above the law. Here we are not bound by any law. Here we are bound by our own whims. We said we can't agree to that. Absolutely we can't. What we do is let us request the selection panel on its own volition to agree to our request. Formally ask them. And most likely they are human beings. They'll understand what you are doing. That was disagreed.
Most
they
likely.
said, no,
Most likely
it is not going to.
So you established that they are human beings.
Yeah, they're human beings.
as opposed to-
Because, you cannot order selection panel under the law.
That's
you have
true.
to cite the law.
Yeah.
So what we did was
Request them.
we requested, that was my letter.
Yeah.
He redrafted it. He made it a resolution of the committee. I refused to sign. I said, this is not a resolution of the committee. It is a request by the committee. Now the next demand was we have to compel IEBC to preserve the servers.
Yeah.
The question we asked, we are compelling as who? Where are we getting the power to compel an independent commission to do ABCD? What we do is let's cite the law. Let's cite the Elections Act and the regulations they are under. Remind them that they are under an obligation under the Act and the regulations to preserve election material for 3 years. I drafted the letter that way. Otiende Amolo rejected it.
On what
said,
basis?
He said, this is not good enough.
It has to be a resolution.
It has to be a resolution of the committee. So he said, sorry.
And the resolution, as you say, would actually be going against the law.
It could be going against the Elections Act.
Because you cannot order
You
the
cannot order
IEBC.
IEBC to do anything. But you can remind IEBC it is bound
of their
by the law.
obligations.
Their obligations under the law. So that is the draft I had given to Honorable Otiende Amolo. It's a draft he rejected, and he gave me 2 different drafts. And unfortunately, I couldn't agree to this because to me, I felt they were going outside the law.
So that one never happened.
So it never happened, and that's what he cited to suspend the talks. Said I refused to sign the 2 letters, right? And unfortunately, it wasn't done very well. It was not tidy because I'd sent him a draft. Said this is what I propose. Instead of sending me a draft, this is what I feel should be. He actually gave me the letters to sign. They were brought to me at about 7-8 o'clock in the evening. I think in his view, he felt I wasn't going to read. But I read. So I saw what the word resolved. The word resolved, I underlined. I said, no, sorry, young man, I can't sign this. Take them to Mheshimiwa. Tell him, I can't sign this.
Do you think everybody can?
The Honorable George Murugara is the MP for Tharaka constituency. He is the co-chair of the no longer parliamentary, of the Bipartisan Dialogue Committee, and is also the chairman of the National Assembly's Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. He is a senior lawyer. Otiende Amolo is a senior counsel. But you called him young man.
No. The one he sent.
Oh,
The one he sent
the
you.
messenger.
Well, he's my junior still.
Even Otiende is still your learned junior.
Otiende is junior to me.
Okay.
He must have been 2 classes behind me.
He's your learned junior.
He's my junior.
Okay.
He's still a young man.
Well, sure. I'm looking at this, and just as you've gone through these details, it looks as though from the very beginning, everybody was coming to this fight with their guns out of the chamber already. And they rather, bullets out of the chamber and saying, look, this is the way we are going to shoot. It really doesn't matter what you bring on the table. It seemed as though from the very beginning, there was already a decision in terms of how people would operate. It doesn't matter what side you are on. So then the question is, why go through all of this if there was already a mindset from the very beginning?
Let me start by saying when Azimio came, Azimio were actually the aggrieved party. The first step we as Kenya Kwanza took was to listen to them. Because you saw they're the ones who gave their issues first.
Yeah.
Then we also had to give our issues. And eventually they were saying some of the issues you guys are giving are an afterthought. We said that's an afterthought. Maybe we didn't even have the issues in the first place until you had the problems which took you to the streets. So when we went there, we had no guns ourselves. We had no bullets. We just carried green twigs of peace. To listen to these people, we hear what it is they have to tell us. But when we went to the table, it's when we discovered that possibly their expectations were more than what we thought. Because when they started telling us to bend the law, then we were worried exactly what we were heading to. Because we weren't prepared to bend the law. We were prepared to work within the parameters of the law, and where we felt the law was being unfair, we would actually have proposals for amendments. So maybe on their side, their guns were blazing and they were really going to shoot anyway. That's why every time anything came up, it is, we are moving out of these talks back to the streets. So there we are. Now we are threatened with several things that are going to happen to us now that the talks are seen to be collapsing. But we just leave it as that. Those are threats that are being issued, and the government is going to deal with that. Yes.
Okay. Earlier on, I asked a question about now this one statement that has been made by Azimio, and you said, well, look, until we hear from the official channels, that is neither here nor there. What does that mean? That the committee will continue with its work? Who will you be discussing with?
Yeah, the committee.
What issues will you then be debating if they're not going to come?
The committee cannot continue with its work without the other side.
Sure.
And therefore, we will have to wait because there are specific clauses in the framework agreement that provide this is what to be done, this is what to be done. Dissolution has to be by mutual consent or one party pulling out after giving the requisite notices, etc. We believe Honorable Tiende Amolo is going to follow what he agreed upon and is going to do what is supposed to be done if they are to pull out. But in my view, they pull out, then it means that's the end of the talks. We are back to what we have, a constitution and the law in place, which I assure you and guarantee you it will be followed to the letter, both by the executive and by parliament, because this is a country of rule of law. We have our constitution, we have our acts of parliament and regulations, which we have to follow at all times. Yeah.
So what will you do in 7 days if they don't come back?
If they do not come in 7 days, we just commit. We may say we continue the suspension. In the meantime, the law continues to work, and you see the selection panel beginning to do its work.
So what will you do as co-chair? Will you write to the selection panel?
There are two things I can do because I have to discuss with my colleagues, the other 6 members. We can also give notices on a dissolution. That's available to us as it is also available to them. Or we can leave the talks suspended because that is the present position we have. Okay. The status quo today is that Azimio called for suspension and that suspension is in force. We can continue with it. But there are no interim orders, as we say in court, to stop anyone from doing anything. There are no interim orders from anyone barring the selection panel from going on with its work. There are no interim orders stopping the government from going on with the measures it's putting in place to address some of the issues that we raised.
What was the content in detail of your letter to the selection panel requesting them to suspend work? Had you said we request you to consider suspending? Was it for 2 weeks, for a month?
No, for about a month.
About a month?
About a month. We had said from 21 to 30 days. When do
those 30 days?
They've already lapsed.
All right.
Because that was the beginning of June.
And when they wrote back to you and said, yes, we have read your letter and we shall consider, what did they say?
Who is this?
The selection panel.
We didn't write to the selection panel.
Who did you write to?
Who did you write to?
I made a draft proposal to Otiende Amolo because the letter had to be co-signed.
And he did not sign?
He did not sign. Instead of sending me, and I made a draft. Okay. It's when he sent me final letters.
Okay.
With many copies to sign, I still have them.
Did the selection panel write to you?
No, they wouldn't have written to us because they were not moved by anyone.
Because you hadn't been moved.
They were not moved by anyone.
So why did the selection panel pause doing its work?
No, even before we made the proposal, it had paused.
Why?
I may consider it to have been when the talks were put into place, and Kimani Ichung'wah read a statement in Parliament when he actually had a draft motion. He actually said in Parliament, in the meantime, the selection panel will hold on its work.
Okay.
I think that may have moved them. And to me, even if I was in that selection panel, I too would have actually halted.
Do you know for how long they've halted?
It must have been, we were constituted in, I think, April. And since April, they've not done anything, because we sat throughout May when they were doing nothing. And when we came up with a proposal to give us 30 days, it was towards end of May, beginning of June, which means they've done it for about 30 days. An extension of the period they had previously when they had not done anything. And this is exactly what we are calling.
What does the Election Act say? When a selection panel is constituted, how long does it have?
I may not. I don't have the Elections Act with me.
Are there timelines?
So I cannot answer that offered. It's good to look at the law so that we read it together. If there are timelines, those timelines can possibly be extended.
Okay.
Or number one, number two, they can be extended by Parliament.
Right.
They can be extended by the courts. So if there are timelines, I think the timelines may be between when they complete the interview and when they send their nominees to the president.
Does the selection panel have prerogative in law to determine when they will begin working? And I'm asking this now outside of what's happening, politically.
Yeah.
Can we constitute a selection panel and they sit and decide, we are going to advertise for these jobs next year?
We will have to look at the law to see how they are governed. If there is no law, there are no regulations that bar them from doing it, they can exercise their discretion. But the exercise of discretion must be reasonable. It must be in tandem with any law that is going to be read as being attached to what they are doing.
And outside of that, outside of the law, outside of regulations, if the selection panel has halted its work without any backing of the law and regulations, we can actually take them to court and say they are abrogating their duty.
I've used the word reasonable.
Yeah,
reasonable
we can argue reasonability.
Reasonable means you explain yourself.
The reasons as
which
to
they
why
haven't.
there's
Why we've done it, which they can actually do very easily.
But which they haven't when they were starting.
They have not. And it's only if it is challenged where they shall be called upon to explain the reasons why they could have done it. The statement in Parliament and the setting up of the Bipartisan Talks Committee.
None of which was communicated to them officially.
Oh, everybody. It's called local notoriety.
Right.
It's a matter of local notoriety. Everybody knows about it. You have taken to have notice of it. All right? Because you're supposed to be in Kenya. From Utopia.
Mheshimiwa, I like that term very
local notoriety.
Notoriety is the one.
You know it. You cannot
it's
in the public domain. It's an obviously.
Nobody told you the president of Kenya is who and you're Kenyan.
Many forums such as the one that you're co-chair of and the mandate they have are clear. It's written down and we understand. But what makes such forums work is never the forums that we are told they're meeting today. It's the backroom discussions that people have and agree upon before you actually come and sit.
Correct.
Are we saying we have exhausted every avenue possible outside the meeting room to say, folks, okay, we hear what you're saying, but what do you actually want that is within reasonable means so that we can see that when we come to discuss, we've actually agreed on some of those things. So this back and forth that we keep providing the public with ceases.
It is not the best. I got to confess that we have not exhausted that. And I'm planning to meet Honorable Tiendo Amolo tomorrow. The two of us will have a tete-a-tete so that we can agree or disagree on how we are proceeding. If they are giving the notices, fine. If they are not giving the notices, are they likely to resume? They also have a say. They must be saying something. Because they know the consequences. I'm sorry. I said yesterday, we are not giving anybody a threat. We are not blackmailing anyone. But you know what the consequences are. If you do not tell us what the problem is with the selection panel, we will assume that you've dropped your complaints and it will go on to do its work. If there are any challenges to be done, we have our judiciary. it will sort that out when the time comes.
But if you do not control, if you cannot order the selection panel, the statements that you're making are sounding like, if you guys don't come back, we'll tell them to start working. You cannot tell them.
That's not what we're saying we are going to do.
No, we're saying
but we are
implication.
No, we are going to say sorry.
Not riot.
No.
Yes. This is more fait accompli.
What we are saying is this.
Yes.
They cannot be suspended forever. And we are not going to write to them to tell them to continue. But they are also reading the papers. They listened to the speeches yesterday. They listen to what we are saying. And they'll spring up and do their work. We are not going to tell them. But there has to be a consequence of what we are doing. Absolutely. It has to be a consequence.
The reason why I approach this matter from the angle I have, there are very few discussions that are of bear the weight that this one has that are actually achieved in plenary. An understanding has to be arrived at before you get there. Okay? Now, wewe ni mheshimiwa. You know full well, and you are a senior, that when somebody says this, they mean this. So let's forget what people have been saying. Let's go to the meaning, okay? Is it possible to exhaust the meanings so that there's an understanding? Let me give an example of what I mean. The president said that they want to tweak the law so that we can have an opposition position by law. Okay, that's my layman's way of putting it. Do you think, for instance, if this was created, because that would mean an office, it would mean all sorts of things, do you think that it would make this conversation better, different? What am I asking? Why have I given that example? There are very many discussions you bring into a situation such as this one, not only to demonstrate goodwill, but to also make it palatable and possible for the things which haven't been said but are meant.
That is one reason why we had the creation of the Office of the Official Opposition Leader as one of the issues from the Kenya Kwanza side. We also felt there may have been a little bit of unfairness in terms of winner take it all, that the person who actually came number 2 and the margin was not that big is not recognized in law. We felt that why don't we create, even if it's not for a person, the entity, all right? And the opposition party can nominate who is going to be their leader. It doesn't have to be the person who came number 2. But it's a recognition, while we have it in our constitution through parliament. Maybe we now think of it slightly outside parliament, in the executive side of government, so that we don't demonize the opposition. In fact, we really need the opposition in the country. These are people who keep us on our toes, just the way we also kept the other people on their toes. Yes, how we do it, we were going to talk about it. I really didn't have the framework on how to do it, but these were 14 people. We would sit down, discuss, and agree. But it's still not lost, because there is a communication to Parliament regarding it, and it has been committed to Justice and Legal Affairs. So I'm going to be picking it up with my committee so that we see how best we can move it forward and which laws we should be looking at. But I agree that we have to look at, even without going to plenary, behind the scenes. It's give and take. So, but we are not reached there. We are not reached there. We are not even done issue number 1. Issue number 1 is IEBC, and this is where I'm saying
this
now.
Is where we are stuck.
We need to start from there. It's give and take.
As we conclude, Mheshimiwa, in the next 30 seconds, I just want to mention some names. Jill Falana, the Reverend Dr. Mutava Musiemi.
Yes.
All right. Senator Skiraitu Murongi and James Orengo.
Yes.
They participated in such kind of conversations before.
Yeah.
They delivered.
Yeah.
Do you think, as George Murugara, you want to be the one who comes at the end of that line and did not deliver?
I don't think I'm the one who is going to be named first. Because those were parliamentary committees, and they were doing it in the parliament. And they did it so well. Believe you me, if this was a parliamentary committee, it would be doing so well. The first handle we have with this is when it was said to become extra parliamentary. Number 1. Number 2, it has so many hurdles that are placed in between. Extremely. And these hurdles are demands. I don't think those who are faced with demands. What we need to do now, if we don't want to join that list, and I, Otiende Amola and I, will possibly be the first ones to be on the other side. And that will be history, because history is always not about successes.
Okay.
Even losses in wars are part of history.
Part of history. We conclude here.
Let's move on to IEBC.
Yeah.
I confirm to them Kenya Kwanza is prepared for give and take.
Okay.
All right. Let's hear what their problem is, what suggestions they have. We will also give them what our proposals are, and possibly reach a consensus.
Sawa.
The rest of the matters will follow. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. The Honorable George Murugara, Tharaka MP, Chairman of JLAC and Chairman of the Co-Chair of the Bipartisan Dialogue Committee. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to